Hey guys, it's M4J here and welcome back to Global Ventures here on Planet Coaster. Now today we are starting to build the interior of the Around the World in 80 Days attraction here in the French/Parisian section of the park, which is right by the entrance, as you remember from the last couple of episodes. So for the queue area here, we have this kind of big empty room, and I always wanted to fill it with some kind of centerpiece. Something a bit showy. So I went on the workshop. I will try and remember to add a link in the description to this workshop item. Basically, this is the Universal globe without Universal written on the side of it. I really liked it. I thought it looked really good. I just typed globe into the workshop. This was the first thing that really drew my eye. So I wanted to add this in the center here because at the end of the day, Around the World in 80 Days, you kind of want some kind of globe centerpiece somewhere in the ride, so I thought why not put it in the queue, and it kind of fills that area quite nicely. We will decorate it a little bit more. I think what I might do is make this room dark and then just put some spotlights shining down on the globe, that kind of thing, but we shall see about that because I'm still not 100% certain on pretty much all of this ride. The two bits that you will see me do today, I'm kind of happy with them. I think it's the kind of thing where I don't need to scrap it and start again, but I will need to continuously tweak it in order to make it look as good as I want it to look. But I'm still, I'm getting there, basically. I'm getting there. My building skills are slowly improving. I've done a lot of kit bashing in this episode. For those of you that don't know what that is, kit bashing is basically where you take a, say for example, a Lego set for a car, and then you sort of take bits out of it, you add bits to it, and you turn it into an aircraft. That's basically kit bashing. So you take something that's designed for one purpose and use it for another. And I've kit bashed a lot in this. So a couple of the buildings that we've used on the exterior of the attraction, I tried to avoid using those as much as possible because I didn't want there to be too much duplication. But there's, I think, one that does sneak its way in at some point, but you'll recognize it anyway. And then I changed quite a lot of it, so it should look different enough. At this point here, I was trying to add water into a trough around the ride. I think the problem is because the ride is relatively flat once you go down this drop until you reach the next lift hill. It was really difficult to get the water in, so I'll keep looking at this. I'll try it off camera and see if I can get some water in. But there is the next show scene after this one I have filled with water, but considerably lower than the track height. So I'll keep looking and see if there's a way that I can actually make it work. I think here I'm looking through the workshop trying to find a paddle steamer. Basically, the plot I've chosen for this ride is kind of an amalgamation between the book and the 2004, I think it came out, 2004 Disney live action version with Steve Coogan and Jackie Chan. So a couple of characters from that film have made their way into the ride, and as well as the journey that happens in the book. So in the film, I think they go London, Paris, and then across on the Orient Express to Istanbul. I'm trying to remember where they go from there, but they end up in China at one point, and then from China they cross to Japan, I think, or straight to San Francisco, and then across to New York, and then back to London. Whereas in the book, they actually go from London to a port in the south of Italy by rail, and obviously crossing the channel by boat. Excuse me. I choked on air, that's good. And then from Italy, they take a steamer through the Suez Canal to... I really should have had this up on the screen in front of me, actually. But basically, they take a slightly different route. So I've kind of gone with a bit of both. Mainly so that I can have all the areas that are in the park be represented in this ride, but also a little bit of artistic license. So, for example, in the film, there's a character called Monique, or Monique, who isn't in the book. And I've added her as a character in the ride just to kind of have that little bit of crossover. And I've kind of taken a little bit of artistic license using some of the animatronics for the different characters as well. So yeah, I've kind of mixed it up a little bit, but I'm quite happy with that actually. I wanted to make it unique because obviously Disney own the rights, or I assume they own the rights to the film. They own some rights to characters in that film, I'm sure. So you can't just blatantly copy that. But at the same time, the book, there were some elements of the book that I didn't think would cross over that well into the ride. For example, the idea of there being a bank robbery. that's not really that family friendly, all things considered. Plus some of the, because the book was written back in 1872 is when the book was released. So the book was actually written during the Franco-Prussian War. So there's some kind of, there's references there, there's little things there. Plus it's Victorian times anyway, so there's a lot of things that need to be updated. So looking back, I've seen the Around the World in 80 Days film a few times, and the first time I liked it, the second time I thought, what is this nonsense? And then since then I've kind of learned to appreciate it a little bit more. It's a feel-good film, it's what it was meant to be, and I kind of like the way they also took some artistic license with it, because I think that's the best sign of a good storyteller, is being able to take an existing story and adapt it to different times. I think that's one of the reasons why the TV version of Sherlock is so successful and popular as well, because they've really done a good job with taking that and adapting it for modern times. Although it has got a little bit ludicrous as time's gone by, but that's another subject for another time. Right, what am I building here? So in the book, the story starts at the Reform Club in London. In the film, the story starts at the Academy of Science, I think it is, or the Royal Academy of Science. Hang on, I'm just opening up Wikipedia as I speak. It was 2004. I remember the year at least. So yeah, in the book, it is the Reform Club that Phileas Fogg is a member of. I keep calling him Phineas. I've got the Outer Worlds in my head still. Phileas Fogg is a member of the Reform Club in London, whereas in the film, he is a member of, I'm desperately trying to find it, the Royal Academy of Science. There it is. So in the book, the bet is £20,000, which is a lot of money these days, that he can't go around the world in 80 days. Whereas in the film, he's promised to become the Minister of Science if he wins. So there's a few differences there. I'm actually tempted to go with the Minister of Science plot for this ride, because again, money and betting isn't really the kind of thing you want to encourage in a family-friendly theme park. So what I'm building on screen right now is the Reform Club. And I actually did some research. I went on Google Images, and I looked up what the Reform Club actually looks like from the outside. It's actually a very bland-looking building from the outside, in all honesty. It's very brutalist type architecture. And the funny thing is, when I first started playing Planet Coaster, I looked up a lot of tutorials and guides and things like that. And the biggest advice, or the most common advice I saw from people, was don't just build a flat wall and then shove loads of windows and doors on it. But as you'll see here, this is exactly what I do, because the real Reform Club looks exactly like this. The corner pieces that you see me moving here, they're not quite the same. There's a little bit of a difference. I think it's more like staggered brickwork on the real building. But overall, this is basically what the Reform Club looks like. Now at this point here, I'm building it based on the London Reform Club. I don't actually know if there's other ones around the world. The fact that it's called the Reform Club London suggests that there are others, but at the same time, it could just be a red herring, and there aren't any others around the world. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is, when I was building this, I wasn't actually sure even if this scene was going to be set in London or whether it was going to be starting in France, bearing in mind that the area of the park that we're currently in is the French-themed area. So do I tell the whole story from London to London, or do I start the story in France? Because both in the film and the book, they do cross the English Channel from England to France, and then from France they then travel by rail either to Istanbul or through to Italy. So that's kind of accurate. So I wanted to build it as if it was French first, and then be able to adapt it if necessary. Plus there's the fact that this is the scene that the train passes through, the railway that goes around the park. So again, it's a little bit jarring if it's meant to be the French themed section, but as you pass by on the train, it's very clearly themed to look like England. So I was really torn on this. I think in the end I've kind of done a mix of the two. The reason being is that steamer that I put in the next room, that's meant to be there to represent the journey across the English Channel. So that then technically makes this scene set in London. So I think that's what we're going to be doing in the end. I think we're going to be setting this first scene in London, which is where the story begins, so it is accurate. And then from there they cross the channel into France, and then it's the next big scene after the steamer that will then be set in France. And actually the second half of this video, because I recorded this as 2 different time lapses, the second half of this video is me sort of starting to build a Parisian themed area, again using a lot of workshop kit bashing. I should probably trademark that term actually, because I've found that my creativity, I think, has improved a lot throughout this series, but I also have found that using workshop assets, particularly since the creation of the Theme Maker's Toolkit, it really has made a massive difference. You know, you can basically just take anything off the workshop and put it in your park and then amend it if necessary. And as I say, it's a massive help. And I will try and remember. Please do let me know if I forget, because I want to give people credit for making these assets on the workshop, because without them I would be struggling right now. So I am very grateful to those who have created these assets. Plus they're brilliantly talented people and should be commended for that. So yeah, this is the Reform Club. Genuinely, if you go on Google and look it up, this is what it looks like. I've scaled it down a little bit so it fits inside this room, and I haven't got the windows perfect. The window designs in the actual building are a little bit different to this, but I've made it as close as possible. It's close enough that you would recognize it if you've been to the Reform Club or seen it in photos and videos and that sort of thing. I was also at one point tempted to make the interior of the Reform Club, because it's got a very nice interior, but I couldn't really find a realistic way to have a boat pass through the center of a building in London. It just didn't feel right. So again, I've used a lot of artistic license. So at this point of the ride, you're technically on the Thames passing the Reform Club, even though the Reform Club is nowhere near the Thames. In reality, it's nowhere near the bank of the Thames anyway. So just take it with a pinch of salt, basically. I've done my best, but it's not all accurate. This point here, yep, just adding in some little bits of theming here. So we've got a nice little hedgerow. The real life building has a stone wall around the outside, but I thought at this point still I was imagining this was the French Reform Club, so I wanted to make it look a little bit different to the London one. But I've kept the hedges in the end because I thought they look quite pretty. They fit the theme quite nicely. And then here we are with our animatronics. So any second now you'll see me start to place. Here we go. There aren't enough human animatronics that aren't dressed up. So you've got pirates, you've got sci-fi, you've got police officers, you've got all that sort of thing, but there aren't really any that are just normal, dressed generically. So I had to use the film crew animatronics, which do actually work. They might be dressed a little bit too modern, but there's not a lot I can do about that right now. I've just chosen some basic animatronics which I think kind of look the part. And already here you can start to see the plot of the ride take place. So Phileas Fogg, I keep saying Phineas, god damn it. Phileas Fogg was the one that I've just placed down here, but I've actually changed him since then. And then you'll also see Passport 2, or Passport Toe, I can never remember how to pronounce his name either. Inspector Fix, who's like the antagonist of the book. He is this guy here that I've just placed crouching next to the hedge. He's this again for this. So in the book, he's meant to be investigating a bank robbery, and he gets a description from Scotland Yard that looks like Phileas Fogg, which is why he follows him all around the world trying to arrest him. In the film, he's a corrupt police officer hired by the Minister of Science to try and stop Phileas Fogg from completing his journey. In the ride, as you're seeing right here, I think I'm going to go with the latter. Someone who's trying to stop Phileas Fogg from winning the bet, basically. Although in this case it isn't a bet, it is to become Minister of Science. So he's trying to stop Phileas Fogg from winning the wager. Because ultimately, let's say in this storyline, Fix is a member of the Royal Academy of Science. Let's not say he is the Minister of Science, because that is someone different. I think in the film it's Lord Kelvin. So let's this kind of say he's just a friend or a close associate of Lord Kelvin, and he doesn't want to see Phileas Fogg become the new Minister of Science, so he's doing everything in his power to stop him completing the journey. We'll just say it's something like that. So he's the antagonist, basically, and he'll do really weird and unruly things to try and stop Phileas Fogg from completing his journey. But something else about this ride, I'm kind of going with the Epcot theme of I want this ride to be entertaining but also educational. So I don't just want it to be there's a storyline going on and we just happen to be innocent bystanders. I kind of want there to be like a lesson involved as well. So as you go through all the countries, it might give you a little bit of history about the country and a little bit of cultural information, that kind of thing. Just to make it a bit more informative than just, you know, here's a guy, he's trying to win a bet, there's someone here who's trying to stop him. Because that does feel a bit bland after a while. So I'll come back to that one, I think, in the future. If anyone has any ideas, by the way, in the comments section, that would be greatly appreciated. Trying to come up with some ideas on how to actually do this, because you know there's a lot of show scenes in this park, in this ride, and each one, or at least one, has to be devoted to an area of the park. So there's a lot of real estate here that we can use. Oh yeah, this is the new Phileas Fogg, because I wanted to make him look like a Victorian explorer rather than just a guy with a shirt and trousers. So he's got this weird hat, and you know he's kind of in a suit. And then in a second, here's Passport 2. So you've got Monique on the stairs. You've got Phileas Fogg standing in front of the doors of the Reform Club. Although, I suppose it is still the Reform Club. There's nothing to say that he's not a member of the Reform Club as well. Actually, I might have had an idea for the ride. I'll explain that in a little bit though. But yeah, this is Passport 2. In the book, he's the manservant, or you know, the aide, the guide to Phileas Fogg. In the film, he's an imposter. He's actually a guy who's just robbed a bank, and takes on the role of Passport 2 in order to become Phileas Fogg's like right-hand man in order to escape the police. And then you've got Inspector Fisk there behind the hedge, sort of undercover. Basically, he's pretending to be a gardener in order to spy on Phileas Fogg. Right, I'm placing some buildings down here. What I'm going to do very quickly is just let the music take over for a little bit, and then when we start building the next big show scene, I'll come back and tell you a little bit more about what's going on and what sorts of things you're seeing there. So ignore the fact that all these walls are jutting through here, because I do remove them in just a second. And yeah, enjoy the music, guys, and I'll be back again very shortly. So here we are, we're back in the London themed area. You can see again it's Parisian based at the moment, but I mean the architecture between London and Paris back in the 1800s was fairly similar. There were some obvious differences, but I can kind of, you can redress the buildings basically and make it look a little bit nicer. Now this section here, as you will have noticed, this is the thumbnail to the video, what you're about to see get built here. So this is the only part of the ride where the railroad comes through. So I wanted to make it look very big, very grand, very lovely. And one thing you will also notice here is there will be a lot of screen usage. Not universal level of screen usage, but Disney level of screen usage. So screens used properly, in other words, and actually look nice rather than just thrown in because, lazy. So this bit here is meant to be, originally it was the River Seine, but the River Seine is technically outside the building as well, so you can kind of have it inside and outside and make it look like the same place. Or you can do what I think I'm going to do and actually make this the Thames instead. So right here, this screen will actually show a clip, not a clip, but like a flat image looking down the Thames. I'll try and find some images of 1800s River Thames. I don't know if that would yield any results or not, but we'll see. And now I'm going to build, originally it was going to be Westminster Bridge, but in the end it's just a generic bridge over the Thames, and I think again it almost ties into the story a little bit better just to have a generic bridge than to try and make it look like Westminster Bridge. So I did do some research on what the Reform Club actually looks like. What I didn't do research on was where the Reform Club actually is in London. I'm assuming it's somewhere in the centre, maybe in and around Westminster, but I'm not 100% sure. It didn't really matter at the time, so I didn't feel like it was a necessity to actually find out where it was. But I might do, you never know. And again, this bridge, it's kind of like it's a baseboard essentially, so I can customize it in lots of different ways if necessary. Plus it's, it's probably not my best work, but it does the job, and that's the main thing. It does the job. Right, so yes, originally it was going to be Westminster Bridge, but instead it's kind of based more on like an amalgamation of lots of different bridges in and around London. The bridges I know best, when I was a kid, I used to go to the London Eye a lot, and also things like the London Aquarium and sort of that area of London where Embankment is. So I know all the bridges around there: Westminster Bridge, Lambeth Bridge, Charing Cross Bridge, Waterloo Bridge. I'm trying to remember what they're all called now. Millennium Bridge you can kind of see. Sort of all the way up to Blackfriars Bridge. So it's kind of a mix of the classics essentially. So all of the good bridges are pretty much around that area. There are some outside of London that are also pretty good, but again, I digress. So it's Westminster Bridge meets lots of other different bridges. And I might even repaint these bridge supports here. I had a lot of problems with these bridge supports because the track of the railway isn't straight, as you can see, and the track of the boat underneath also isn't straight. So trying to find a way to uniformly place these bridge supports so that everything flows through it and over it properly was really, really, really tricky. But you'll see a little bit later on in the video, the result is actually pretty good. And also from the thumbnail, you'll see the result is pretty good. And I am quite happy with that. So yeah, this is kind of the grand opening to the ride. So you have that little section right at the very start before you go down the drop. But once you go down the drop, this is like the first big show scene that you come into. The bit before that is kind of like a prologue. So there'll be speakers, there'll be a voiceover, there'll be some other stuff going on. This is the first time where you see proper theming and scenery and all that kind of thing. And if you happen to go through the ride at the exact moment that the train passes overhead as well, then you're very, very lucky. You've basically hit the jackpot. Hit the jackpot at that point. So yeah, these bridge supports. Oh boy, the number of times that I debated actually keeping this or whether I should just scrap it and start again. Really, really difficult. Even with the grid size as small as possible, just moving the supports one to the left meant it interfered with the track in a whole new way. And if you move it back, it interferes with the track again. And there was no winning essentially. So here you can see I just go screw it and start again. So the supports are, yeah, they're a little bit finicky, and I feel like there's almost pieces missing. So one thing I wish they'd add is where the archway goes up to the top. If they just had like a 1 meter high piece, so that you could extend, instead of just having an archway that goes straight up and straight down again, you could have an archway a bit like the Maidenhead Viaduct on the Great Western Main Line, where it goes up and then it sort of flattens out at the top and then it comes down again. And you know, I don't think that's too much to ask myself. I think just a nice little addition like that, because then instead of having to put those big brick things in to hide the fact that there's a gap in the support structure, I could just put that little wall piece in instead, make it look a little bit nicer. But you know, I think we're at the point now where the developers aren't really adding new content to the game, they're just fixing what's already there, and I also don't have a problem with that. I know some people do, but personally I think it's, the game itself has pretty much come to its natural conclusion now. There isn't that much more you can add to it beyond maybe a couple of ride types and maybe a couple of extra wall pieces, and that's about it. So I'm not complaining. I think we're in a good place, and I made it work. That's the other thing. You know, you learn to improvise in this game. You learn to try things out. You learn to use pieces not necessarily what they were designed to be used for. So I think in that instance we're okay. You know, things could be worse. So yeah, double-sided bridge deck. Very nice, very lovely. And then at this point, because there's a big slope in the bridge, I've added in this extra support bit here as well on the front. I don't think I did it on the back. I think I only did it on the front. And then just to really make it look nice, this nice little railing that runs across the front as well. First time I've ever used the vintage pack in this park, and I think some of the pieces, I would have liked to have seen some more stuff related to pier structures, but overall, I think very nice. This fencing as well is really, really nice. It just fits perfectly with what I was going for here, because the vintage pack, of course, is set in, you know, Victorian style England anyway, so it was almost made for this, which I think is awesome. And then just because I can, this extra little curved bit here as well. I still don't 100% know how I'm going to build the sort of the approach to this building for the railway, because it is, again, you're in a tunnel. You've just left the Egyptian section. You're in a tunnel, and then you suddenly come out of the tunnel and you're on a bridge in a France-based attraction that has a scene set in London. It's really trippy trying to get your head around it, but that's theme parks for you. There's no perfect natural boundary between these areas. There's always going to be some kind of you know, knee-jerk transition from one to the next. I'm still thinking, for example, how to transfer from a futuristic Japanese themed section into a sort of modern-day Tudor-inspired British section. It's just part of the fun of the game, you know. And I'm actually looking forward to getting stuck into that. But right now we're not there. We're here. So yeah, these bridge supports, again, you know, they're pretty realistic when you sort of compare it to real life river bridges. They do look a lot like this. You kind of have a really thin, spindly structure from the bridge itself, and then it goes onto a big pier that's sort of just above the water level, and that's kind of the main support of your entire structure. So it's almost like that's the foundation level, and then you build the bridge supports on top of that, and then the bridge deck on top of that, and you know, it flows really nicely. I'm quite happy with this. Again, you can see I'm struggling to get these archways in. I wanted the archways to go at the back as well. Normally I would just have this as like a wall and that's it, but because there's the screen on the other side, and it's meant to look like the river, you know, continues down towards, let's assume we're going from east to west. No, let's assume we're going from west to east. Let's say we're flowing down towards like the Thames docks. So yeah, it's meant to look like it, you know, it continues past some of the other big bridges. Maybe have like Tower Bridge in the background, that kind of thing, and then eventually out to sea, and that'll be where they get on the steamer that then takes them across to France. So yeah, just trying to fit all this together. It's going to be a lot of improvising. That building that sticks through the wall there, I will amend that in the future as well. But it's one big sort of improvisation that's going on right now, and it will look nicer when it's done. I think I will cover a lot of this with terrain, because then it flows nicely into the Egyptian section as well, have it all underground. Plus it really gives that effect of dark ride. So I will have some kind of like spotlights up in the ceiling that light it up to make it look like day when necessary. But I think a lot of this will be sort of night based as well. Because, I mean, the ending, spoiler alert here, but the ending of the book is all to do with daylight savings hours and how many sunrises and sunsets. So to actually have that incorporated into the ride as well, you'll get some really, really nice imagery on the screens. If I can try and create like a sunset looking type thing. I have no idea where I'm going to source the photos from for the screens though. They might be staying blank for a little bit. The idea really is to find some royalty free time period photos and see if I can use those in the ride, because that would really set the scene nicely, and then somehow adds some theming to the walls and the ceilings in order to make it look not like a wall or a ceiling, but to actually make it look like, you know, the world continues. So this scene here, this is set out at sea, crossing the English Channel. So I wanted to put in the big steamer. The animatronics will also be placed there as well. This is me placing the Thames in as well, trying to make it look all like one continuous river. I would like to find a way to raise the water level though, so that the track sits in the water rather than like 2 meters above. It's not that realistic looking right now. You know, you wouldn't just have like a water channel and then a drop to the rest of the body of water. So I'll have to try and find a way to fill that in. We shall see. And then again, big screens on the walls. I've gone for the really big screens this time, the 32-meter ones. And these are literally just going to show the sea in the background. Nothing special, just the ocean. So that should be a lot easier to find as well. And then yeah, these big, huge scenes here at the back as well. I will move this wall on the right in just a second. I do some swapping around so that the boat isn't just sticking out of the wall, because that does look a little bit dumb. So here we go, move some wall pieces. We'll also move the terrain in a second, and then we'll put the big screen along the back wall as well. So the animatronics will be standing on the middle deck, which is roughly at the same level that the ride vehicle passes by at. There'll be some kind of dialogue. I don't know what they'll say yet. There'll be like sea noises, seagulls, that kind of thing. It's all about creating that atmosphere, which isn't my forte, as I'm sure you know. I like building rides. I'm terrible at theming them. So yeah, there'll be something going in that bit, I'm sure. Right, this is the French themed section. This is the first time that the characters enter France. And right now, I've gone on the workshop and I've downloaded some Eiffel Tower type assets. But I think what I might actually do is those screens that I just placed. This is me on the workshop right here, trying to find the Eiffel Tower. Those screens that I placed just now, I think I might have a Parisian landscape there instead and have an Eiffel Tower there. So I think that would actually look more realistic than trying to build a forced perspective Eiffel Tower within the room. The preferable option is to make it as many real sets as possible and then just use the screens to fill in the blanks. But I think for something like that, you rely on the forced perspective a little too much, and because you're not stationary, this is a moving vehicle, the forced perspective might not work from every angle. And you know, there's a lot of criticism. The France Pavilion at Epcot has that fake Eiffel Tower, and the forced perspective on it doesn't always work depending on where you are in the park. So you either take that risk and hope that it works, or you rely on a different form of trick in the eye. So I think I'll go with the screens for the Eiffel Tower. But I have built some Parisian inspired buildings. This is one of them here, and also this is the section of the building where the queue line of the ride actually peeks in and has a look at one of the show scenes. So I had to incorporate that into a building, and I'd like to think I've done a pretty good job with that myself, but it's not really mine to judge. And the whole idea of, because it's the Parisian themed section of the park, or the French Parisian themed section of the park, it really made sense to have this be the ground level peak from the queue, whereas all the other sections where the queue does look into the ride, they're all above. So when you're on the ride vehicle, you don't see the people in the queue, because then it kind of snaps you out of the immersion. Whereas when you're in the queue, you know, you can look down into the ride and experience it a little bit more without it being too immersion breaking, because you're not actually on the ride experiencing it at that point. This is me doing a little bit of, again, kit bashing, just trying to make this building fit inside the available space. One of the issues we have here is there's actually some ride track in the room above this one. So trying to make it fit, you can see there the roof kind of pokes through into that above room. So the room above, most of the action is going to be on the right hand side. So on the left hand side here, there'll just be a flat wall. So you won't actually notice that there's another building facade, like just the other side of the wall. I think I do kind of sink this into the roof a little bit more to just try and make it fit. It just about fits. There's a very, very tight squeeze. I just about make it work. And then I kind of remove all the excess here. So yeah, it's a lot of these buildings are going to be a tight squeeze. But then you know, in real life, you can make two walls meet and that's the end of it. Whereas in the game, a wall is a certain width and a certain height. So to try and make it all fit is a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. But when it works, it'll look really, really good, I hope. Fingers crossed. We shall see. Yeah, I do snip this little excess bit here just to try and make it fit a little bit nicer. We cut that bit off as well, we move it across. There's no wall pieces between the walls and the roof. There's nothing that fits that size. So I'm not really sure how are you meant to fill that gap. For me, if they're making a wall piece with that kind of gradient, then they also need to make a... did I say wall piece? If they're making a roof piece with that sort of gradient, they need to make a wall piece that also fits. And they don't. So I'm having to try and sort of clip that into the walls as well so that it doesn't become noticeable. So on this first bit, when you enter the room, the wall kind of gives in to the facade there, so you shouldn't be able to see it. And then on this side, by the time you get to this side, it's behind you. So again, you shouldn't really be able to turn around and actually see it. But yeah, I'm a little bit torn by it, in all honesty. I'm not 100% happy with it. So I might replace the roof pieces with something that's a bit more manageable. But again, we shall see. You know, right now, looking at it back, when I was building it, I was kind of okay with it. But looking back at it, there's a lot of things that I'm kind of thinking, okay, next time I'm in the game, I'm going to change this, I'm going to change this, I'm going to change this, just to try and make it a little bit nicer. But again, you know, you put some screens up on the ceiling and you can hide some things, and it's all about drawing the eye away from the bad sections. So by the time the boat reaches that section, there'll be like a sound cue or something on the other side of the room that will make the riders turn their head. It's very clever when you actually see the techniques that theme parks use in order to draw the eye away from some of the flaws in their designs. It is really, really clever how they do it. Right, so yeah, this is Paris. So I needed to build some Parisian-inspired buildings. And all the things I downloaded from the workshop are massive. Way, way, way too big. So I've basically had to go in and build my own buildings, which was a frightening experience. So you will see me build one in a second. As I also said, you know, where the queue peaks in, I've had to build a custom building around that. I'm kind of going with the same style. Do I place this build? No, I don't think I do. That's the building that we actually used for the station building for the railroad. So again, I didn't want to use that more times than I had to. Here we go. This is the queue building going in now. So originally it lined up perfectly with these windows. What I've done instead is actually slanted it slightly so that when you're in the queue, you're walking from right to left. In the direction we're looking now, so you go from the right hand side to the left hand side. So I've kind of slanted it slightly so that you look in at an angle into the ride. So when you're on the ride, you're not like making direct eye contact with people that are straight in front of you. There's kind of a little bit of a gap, and again, it goes towards helping the immersion a little bit more as well. So right now this is flat against the wall, but you'll see in a second I do actually move it out slightly, so it stands a little bit proud from the main wall. Is it here that I do it? Yes, it is. And then I see here that the wall doesn't actually line up, so I move that back in place. And then in just a second I move it one tile to the left, and then cover the gap. And you know, again, I'm quite happy with it. I think it looks alright the way it's turned out. And as I say, it just avoids that direct line of sight. So you still get to see the ride when you look in from the queue, but when you're on the ride, you can't necessarily see the queue. And it's just that little extra element of hiding it away and trying to keep the immersion. And I keep using those same terms over and over again, keep repeating myself basically, but it is really important when you're building a ride of this style, this scale. You've got to keep the immersion, otherwise you're in deep trouble. Because if you spend $100 million on an attraction, and then the first thing people say when they get off it is, "Oh, that wasn't very immersive," then you've basically just wasted your money. Right, this is me moving it out a little bit further, and then I move it off to the side slightly. There. Any second now. There it is. So yeah, now it looks a lot nicer, and I can. What this means as well is I can put a wall down this side. So if you are an inquisitive person when you're on the ride and you turn around to look behind you, you do still see a facade rather than just a wall. Because that, again, even though you're not supposed to look in this direction, it is quite immersion breaking if you were to and just see a not themed wall. Although that being said, because the roof pieces are terrible, there's kind of that gap there, so I have to try and find a way to fill that. I don't know. I might just swap the roof out, put something else in for both buildings in this room. But yeah, there's a lot more that needs to go into this room. You know, using the screens is a good way of filling that big gap, but I might put some physical sets in front of the screens as well, so you're kind of looking down side streets rather than just have a big open screen area. I think that would work a lot better. Plus, again, space is quite limited here because there's a track just above as well. I think it's the next room, like the paddle steamer room, there's no track above, so we can kind of go a little bit more crazy with some of the set pieces and the theming. So I think that will be the rail journey, the beginnings of the rail journey. I don't know whether we go with the Orient Express. I think we'll just go with a generic train from France through to Italy. And then, you know, we're stuffed again because I have no idea about Italian architecture. So we'll have to try and improvise there a little bit there as well. So I might just do some Googling between now and next week to see if I can learn about architecture and all that kind of good stuff. And yeah, this is how I hide these gaps here. So I've got these sort of wall decorative pieces that form the actual wall itself, and then the same pieces that I used for the stairs of the Reform Club I also then use for the floor of this section, and I will in fact have to do the same for the ceiling as well, because I know for a fact that I've not filled in the ceiling and there's a big gap there, so I'll have to go through and do that too. Right, I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to let the music take over. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but it means that I'm not talking across a black screen, because I've talked over the end of the video, because I do that a lot, and it's very annoying. So yes, I'm going to end things here. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Do hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you're enjoying the series. If you have any advice or any tips or any ideas for future episodes, be sure to comment them down below. You can also head over to my Discord, link should be in the description, and leave some suggestions there, and also my Reddit community, link is also in the description, so you can leave some ideas there too. Besides that, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for continued support. Enjoy the rest of the music, enjoy the rest of the time lapse, and until next time, I will see you soon.